Alright, I'm going to show you how to compile custom QMK firmware for your Massdrop ALT keyboard. A lot of this will apply to the control as well, but we're going to do a deeper dive into QMK for more customization options than just the Massdrop configurator allows for, as well as document my journey of learning this because I want to make more custom animations for my Massdrop ALT, and this is one of the first steps of the process of learning how to do that. So, a couple tools that we're going to be using. I'm on Windows, so I'm using Windows PowerShell with MD Loader Windows to flash the firmwares that I build, and I'm going to be working inside a Debian virtual machine. Because I'm on Windows, I just want to do it in a virtual box. Just keep my entire development environment in this Debian machine. And we're going to pretty much start from scratch. One thing to mention real quick is even though I'm on Debian, a lot of these instructions are going to work exactly the same for Ubuntu. And if you're unfamiliar with Linux, Ubuntu is a great place to start to just install it in a virtual machine if you're wanting to do that just for this process. I am going to assume that you know some of the basic Linux command line stuff. So have git installed and know how to at least move around directories and things like that. So let's git. We're going to clone the repo. And the repo that we're cloning here is not the QMK repo main branch. The branch that we're going to clone is specifically from Massdrop. So git clone, that looks correct. Here we go. We have the repo, so first things first, let's go into that repo. And to install our development environment, they have a script that's really easy to run in the utils directory. It's called, wait, did I do that right? Util, not utils, util. So QMK_install. It's a shell script. It's going to set up your development environment and all the dependencies that you're going to need for this. Let's test to make sure that these dependencies are all installed. We're going to make the default firmware just to make sure that we can make firmware. So make, we're going to say Massdrop. So this is the directory structure inside the keyboards folder that we'll go over in a minute. So Massdrop ALT. They have a folder in Massdrop for both the ALT and the control. And then here we select a key map. Once again, we'll get more into this in just a minute. So we're going to say the default key map for the Massdrop ALT. Let's build it and make sure everything works correctly. All right, everything looked good. Let's ls, and now you see we have this Massdrop ALT default.bin, and that's just the same binary, the default that the Massdrop ALT comes with. So knowing that that built properly, we're good to go forward. Open, I like Visual Studio Code, so to open Visual Studio Code in the current directory, we just type code, period, bangarang, and now I have some Visual Studio open. Now that we have the QMK firmware open in Visual Studio, let's go over some handy files that these are going to be some important files that we're going to be wanting to edit. In TMK core, in protocol, and in this ARM ATSAM, two files right here. ledmatrix.h, which is a header file, and ledmatrix.c, which is the actual C code for the LED matrix. So let's start in the header file. The header file is handy because this is where we have the defined flags that we're going to use for the customizations of colors. And here's the type definition and the data structure of the LED instructions. And so you can see that we pass flags. These flags that you pass are going to be some of these. So null is to turn the LEDs off. Match ID is to specify which keys. Match layer, that's for layer 0 and layer 1 for when you hold the function key. Use RGB allows you to just set simple RGB colors. And then there's the use pattern, which lets you select the pattern from rainbow scrolling or that like blue to pink, the cyan to pink. I have been liking to keep this over in my second column, and I keep this real small just so that I can see those flags and what I need to pass to this type structure as we get going. All right, so that's the header file. In the C file, let's keep this open though, this LED matrix C. We're gonna come back to this in just a minute. So some of the next files that we're gonna want to go to, that's all we need out of this TMK core. Those are the only files that we're gonna be modifying in the main source code. So over here in keyboards, we obviously have a Massdrop ALT that I'm working with, Massdrop ALT. And here we go. Here's all the stuff specific to the Massdrop ALT. For example, in LED programs, here's where we have all of the animations, built-in animations and things like that. So rainbow scrolling, this is how that's defined. I'm not good at these yet, but the goal is for me to be able to write these and make custom animations. All right, so LED programs.c, that's where we have all of our animation definitions. We're gonna go into config LED here. So down at the bottom of config_LED.h, here's where we have USB LED indicator enabled. So we define this real fast, and then if this is defined elsewhere in the code, that's how the caps lock function works. So for example, if we just wanted our caps lock key to do absolutely nothing, all you would do is this define right here, add 2 backslashes to comment it out, and now your caps lock would do whatever animation or whatever preset it's set to, and when the caps lock is pushed down, there's no notification via the LED color. So that's how you would completely disable caps lock. But I'm going to leave that enabled because I'm actually going to customize what the caps lock colors do here in a minute. All right, so I've gone through some of the basic files. I don't really need that. Those are some of the basic files that we're gonna need to be somewhat familiar with. I'm actually gonna close this config LED, don't save because... So where we're gonna start editing right here is in key maps. We have default, here's your Macintosh key map as well. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm on Windows, so I'm gonna be using the default key map. Now what I want to do here is we're going to create a brand new key map. So in key maps, let's create a new folder. Let's call this Pleasure Tech. And then this keymap.c, from the default, we're just going to save as, and we're going to save it in my folder. So now what I'm working on is Pleasure Tech keymap.c. This is the main file that we're going to do 99.5% of our customizations in here. This top section is pretty self-explanatory. I like that this is very easy to customize what your keys actually do. So these are those transparent keys, meaning it falls back to whatever it did on the previous layer. Now I'm going to customize some of these because I like some media keys and some things like that. So that brings us to our first link to go to. So the official QMK documentation, keycodes overview. Here we have all the basic keycodes, and if you scroll down for a little while, where am I going? I want my multimedia keys. So here we go, multimedia keys. So next track, previous track, and play and pause I like to have on my keyboard. And you could use the full, or you could use the abbreviated. I like using these abbreviated aliases. So this is next track, and I like my next track to be on my period, my period greater than, so that is the dot right here. We're gonna paste that in, so that's media next. What's media previous? KC media previous. Copy that, we're gonna put that right there. I also happen to like a calculator. We're gonna put this, put calculator there. And my computer. I like having these handy to just quickly open some applications. Oh, let's do my spacebar as well. So as I'm holding the function key, I'll hit these and it'll go media next, media previous, and I like my space bar to actually be pause, play pause. So when I'm holding function, we get to play pause functionality. Like you would usually get on YouTube or something, but this is for, say, Winamp or foobar. Alright, so after making those changes, let's go ahead and save. I now have the key layout and the functionality that I want. So let's go ahead and start talking about the LEDs. Now the LEDs, it's all going to be down here at the bottom. This LED instruction T, inside these brackets right here, this is where we're going to do all of our LED customizations. And this is also why I pulled from the Massdrop branch of the QMK source code instead of the QMK official branch. I'm going to copy the first line, I'm going to copy it in, and we'll explain it, talk through it, and then I'll show you how I figured out all of these. So paste in the first line. And this is why I like to have my LED matrix.h header file open as well, because this is what we're going to need right here. The first option is .flags. This comes from this right here. It's the first thing in the type definition. And these flags, these are the types of flags that we can pass. So we're going to say match ID because we want this only on certain keys. We're going to say use RGB because I'm going to set RGB values for these specific keys, and match layer, meaning this is only going to apply to layer 0. So since we defined the flag match layer, we're going to pass in the layer and equals 0, and that comes from right here, layer equals 0. Here's where it gets a little tricky. In fact, let's just skip over that for a minute because we have RGB, red, green, blue values in 0 to 255, like a lot of people are used to. It makes it really nice to be able to set colors and find colors. So I'm setting some keys to pink. Now, there's a really handy spreadsheet to help come up with these ID numbers, because what we need to do is pass in an unsigned integer, a 32-bit unsigned integer, and that tells us what keys are going to be colored. So it's not an array of key numbers or key IDs or anything like that. It's a bitwise number. And there's a really handy spreadsheet to help us calculate all this. And as I open this spreadsheet, I'd also like to thank people from the Massdrop forums that have really helped out, and I wouldn't have been able to do this without their posts. So thanks to Last Continue and FamGuy07, because originally this was Last Continue's spreadsheet. FamGuy modded it a little bit more, and then I took it and modded just a few slight things. So it's not like I built this spreadsheet. Shouts to FamGuy07 and Last Continue for putting this together and figuring out all these IDs. So on this spreadsheet, we have an overview of our keyboard with key numbers, or LED numbers, we're going to call them, right? So we have our map. If we want to see LED number 1, it says ID array 0, binary 1. And what the ID array is, so back in the code, we have ID 0 and ID 1. What those correspond to are, there's these colors, right? Green color is ID 0, and there's 32 LEDs per ID, and that's why they're segmented like this. So we have 4 groups. We have ID 0, ID 1, ID 2, which there's only really the 3 keys over here, and then it starts on the escape around the edges of the board. And then ID 3 isn't even a full 32 because it only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Only has 9 spots. 4 sections. So from these 4 sections, you see pink only applies to 0 and 1. There aren't any keys in ID 2 or ID 3 that are pink, so we don't need to include those. We only need to add the ID of keys that we're going to be actively changing. So let's start with an example of WASD, because a lot of people want WASD custom colors. We see W and A are both in ID 0, and S and D are actually in ID 1. So with key 18, you can put it in here to figure it out. Oh, not 118. 18, it's ID 0, and it has this binary value of 131072. in which it's not a, it's a bitwise value. It says binary, but it's bitwise value of that. A is 32. This also has this bitwise value of a lot larger. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add those two bitwise together for W and A in group 0 to then say ID 0 is now that right there. So on the second tab down the bottom, we have our key map. Let's go ahead and write down some keys that we want to change. So WASD, we have 18, 32, and that's in the first group, and then the second group we have 33 and 34. 18, and then this is automatically going to come up with a bitwise value. 32, we have a bitwise value, and then down here at the bottom, it sums it all up, so we add everything for each of these colors. This is the ID that you're going to use for ID 0 to just color 18 and 32. You would want to pass this for the color green. So back to the example that we're working with, that line of code is pink. We want pink keys, right? So 17, 19, 20, 21, all these keys are going to be colored pink. And what those are is actually the not WASD keys. We want those to be pink. And then in group 1, we're going to want a lot of the other keys to be pink. So the example of group 0 though, we want these keys to be pink. So back to the code, we're going to copy this 5366734 That is the ID for ID 0 for the keys that are going to be pink. That's how I came up with this number right here to turn these keys pink. So this is the hardest part to grasp, as well as the hardest part for me to explain in the whole thing, is this bitwise math to get these keys certain colors. We're going to go ahead and copy some more code in. Cool, we have pink, green, and cyan keys here. And the cyan keys are only in ID 1. The green, the WASD, here's the IDs for WASD. If you just want to change RGB, here we go. This is WASD. Let me make a comment there. WASD green. This is JKL :cyan. And this is all the pinks that aren't those. For my keyboard, in my default setting, I like the escape lights coming out the side and the back of the base of the board, but I don't like those lights shining in my face. So we're going to turn some LEDs off. And this is going to be slightly different because we're going to pass in a new flag. Previously we've used the same flags, match ID, use RGB, and match layer. In this one we're going to say null. So instead of use RGB, we're just setting this ID to null, and we're only going to have it apply on layer 0. So if you want it on both layers, you can leave this flag out, and you can leave the dot layer out as well. So now we want the rainbow pattern around the very edge of all my modifier keys, and let's paste in this next one and talk about it. So we're still going to match ID. We've talked about how to come up with the bitwise IDs. We're going to say use rotate pattern. And this is the pattern that you can select. So that way when I use function D, it can switch all the patterns from scrolling to the pre-built-in Knight Rider patterns, etc. So rotate pattern is the flag if you want it to pattern like the rainbow scroll. And we can set a pattern ID for the default starting pattern as well. These pattern IDs, those come from LED programs. This array down at the bottom. So position 1 is actually rainbow scroll. You'd expect that to be position 0, but it's not like that. So pattern ID comes from LED programs. So this is it for layer 0. This is my base layer. I have WASD highlighted, I have cyan highlighted, I have some off, and some pink. So on to layer 1. So the only thing really different is layer equals 1. We're still going to use RGB, we're still going to match IDs here, and turn some green. So I'm going to copy all these modifier keys in. We're also going to turn most of the keyboard off. And on layer 0, I had the front-facing LEDs on the escape off. On layer 1, I want those on. So I want the rainbow staring at me while I'm holding the function key. Simple enough, right? So now that I've copied and pasted a whole bunch of text in here, we're going to save this file, and we're going to make sure that this will build. Make sure I didn't have any crazy typos or anything. So now make Massdrop ALT. Now instead of default like I did first, I made a folder called Pleasure Tech, and that's where my custom key map is. So I'm going to say make Massdrop ALT Pleasure Tech. That is why I copied and pasted some of those lines of code so that it would actually compile first try. So I know that this firmware is going to be good. I have firmware Massdrop _alt Pleasure Tech. I could go ahead and flash this to my board, but we're going to go ahead and make one last change, because so far all the changes we've made, you could make this layout in the Massdrop configurator tool. One thing we can't do in the Massdrop configurator tool though is edit some things over here in LED matrix. USB LED indicator enable. I want to copy that because in LED matrix we're going to find. So we're going to search for that, and here we go. If def, so that's where if defined, and this is the gold stuff right here. Let's go ahead and close find. I don't need that highlighted. So it says, you know, if LED caps lock, which we know it's 30, so it's not 255, then we're going to go ahead and do all this stuff. How the caps lock code currently works is, you know, if RGB value.r, so if the red value is greater than 127, which is half of 255, remember this goes from 0 to 255. So what it says is if it's greater than half, set it to 0, and if it's less than half, set it to 255. So what this code is doing here is setting a threshold value of if it's greater than half, set it to 1, if it's less than half, set it to another. This can be good and can be bad, because when you're in the rainbow scrolling mode, it makes your caps lock almost stutter, or it gives it a very bouncy pattern, whereas your whole keyboard is moving smoothly, but your caps lock, it doesn't really vibe. So since it doesn't vibe, we're going to comment out all this code. So all this if stuff right here, comment this out, and we're going to write a little bit of new code here to control the RGB value when caps lock is held down. Now if you wanted to set just a constant RGB value, you could do LED cur CUR, there we go, RGB.R equals, we'll just set it to white real quick. So that would be RGB. So you could just set it to a solid color right here and be done with it. But I want to find the difference and apply that. And where I'm going to do that, so we're still going to say equals, but instead of just equals 255, let's copy this. We're going to say 255 minus. So 255 minus the current value of red gives us the difference of red. Same thing for G and B. All right. This code right here of smoothly finding the difference, so 255 minus the current red, it's going to give me a smooth fade. It's as simple as that. It's now the opposite color of the rest of the rainbow, but it fades smoothly with the rainbow instead of being a block. So we're going to save this. Make sure everything is saved. let's make sure I remove my last firmware. All right, no more Pleasure Tech. We're also going to make clean because there's other packages that are already compiled that we've saved. We want to make those from scratch again. Make Massdrop ALT Pleasure Tech. Here we go. We now have this firmware, Massdrop ALT _ Pleasure Tech.bin, that has both custom caps locks, and we have a default layout for keymaps.c and everything like that. So this is pretty much all I need from this virtual machine. I now need to just get this file from this virtual machine onto Windows and flash it to my board. I always have SSH running, and it's very simple for me to just win SCP. It's an SCP tool. So here we go, QMK firmware. Massdrop ALT Pleasure Tech. There it is. Here it is, that bin that I just built on that virtual machine. I just moved it over here. So we're gonna go onto my desktop, into the alt. Here is that I just built just a couple minutes ago. And let's flash it. MD loader first, and that's gonna give us that 60 seconds to go into bootloader mode on the board. Whoa. Download. Make sure it gave me a space there too. All right, with the command already, restart typed, the only thing left to do is actually flash the board. So we're gonna enter, then hold function and B for about 2 or 3 seconds, let go, and that puts your board into DFU mode so it can flash firmware. Windows will make a couple seconds, couple sounds, couple seconds, and we're back. And now let's get a camera angle from over here. And let me show you now what the caps lock does. It's a smooth scroll. So when the rainbow fade happens, when caps lock is pushed down, it's smooth. Game changer. And so it'll still try to find opposite colors. For example, let's go to a different pattern. This is just rainbow, so it's orange over here or reddish. No caps lock. Finds alternating colors, but when you have it in a scroll mode, it scrolls smoothly. There we go. Fancy. So there you have it. I tried to kind of rush through some of the parts, so if I wasn't clear enough because I'm really stoned as I'm doing this, leave a comment down below. I'll get back to you. There's a lot of links that I'm going to leave up on here. Most importantly, the QMK branch that we built from is the Massdrop branch. We have MD Loader, which is the firmware flasher. I'm using it on Windows. Leave a link to that down in the description below. There was that spreadsheet from, it's a Google Sheets spreadsheet. I have a link down to that, and that'll help you find the bitwise IDs that you're going to be assigning for the LEDs, and it has the LED map that you can, it's separated by ID and everything. Makes everything a lot easier, which once again, big shouts to Last Continue and FamGuy07 on pretty much building that spreadsheet. I modified it a little bit, but that's theirs. Links down below to their original forum posts on the Massdrop forums if you guys want to dig a little deeper. And thanks for joining on me this. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. You know what to do. I'm out here. If you have any questions about this Massdrop ALT, I'm going to be digging deeper soon because the goal of getting to this point was so that I can build custom animations. I love the rainbow fade, but I want to do something more than just a right to left scroll, and making animations sounds like it'd be kind of fun. So stay tuned for some of those. Hopefully I'll have some videos coming soon on the trials and tribulations and bashing my head against the keyboard trying to figure out how this stuff works. But there you have it. Compiled from source on a local machine in Debian. Ubuntu will also work for this really well. I just happen to have Debian images lying around, VirtualBox images. So there you go. Thanks for sticking around for this long, and have a great one. Go get stoned.